like to call recursion the base function of the universe, because everything in our universe works recursively. And recursion, just in simple terms, is in computer science, it's a function that calls itself from within, essentially, to create that next state. So it's just a series of inputs create outputs, and those outputs need to be refined and put back in. And so that process of recursion is an infinite process. So even when you look at the universe as a whole, it's just recursion. So people say, oh, do you reckon we're living in a simulation? And I'm like, well, even if we were, the developer who coded that is recursion.
Welcome to The Critical Mass, the show about turning struggle into strength and momentum. I'm Phil Diasinos, and I'm on a mission to hit my own critical mass, the point where effort turns into unstoppable progress. Along the way, I'll be sitting down with people who have been through the fire and come out sharper, stronger, and more resilient. We'll break down their stories, lessons, and mindsets so you can feel your own journey. Let's get into it. Welcome. I've had some pretty interesting guests on this show. So it's critical mass, so people that are hitting those goals and life-changing. So I thought, who can I get on better than that can really show that? They weren't available, so yeah. I've got Andy Williams here, and but honestly, Andy's a good friend of mine. He's a high performer. Anything he does at a very high level. You've got SAS background. I think youngest ever to be
one of. Yeah, I was 20 when I passed. Yeah, which is Australian Special Forces selection for SAS.
Yeah, which if anyone knows anything about the selection process, it's grueling for the best of us, let alone...
The government needs to be audited for giving a 20-year-old a gun, I reckon, but especially me, but other than that, it's...
it seems to have worked out all right, so
it's been good.
Yeah. But, from the coaching space and high-level cyclists...
Yep. So I went from basically Special Forces, soldier to... mammal, middle-aged, what do they call him? Middle-aged man in Lycra or whatever it is. Right, yeah. So that was my descent from the heavens. But I think it was good. It obviously, taught me a lot of different things, and it was kind of like that transition out of the military thing. But it was. I've had a couple of different things go on in my life, but now really focusing on that high performance coaching element of things, and that's really where I've been focusing for the last decade or more, which obviously is kind of my background. Everything that I do, I kind of try to live and breathe that high performance mentality, and that's how we met as well. So
so it's been a journey working with you.
My favourite human.
Get out of here. But it's good, and we've come a long way, and it's. So it was good. So the first time I actually met you in person was doing the marathon. Or you did the marathon. I did the 10K in Gold Coast, which was.
Was that the first time in person?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That was a cracker of an event. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was good to meet the wider community, like a lot of your clients and people that you work with, and really good network that you've built, a community of high level, high achieving performers and really open, good, honest people that are happy to share their successes and what got them there, and opening those networks. So it was really good to connect. And
I think that's a huge thing with networks these days. We have so many different tools and environments and things like that we can, and groups and tribes that we can be a part of now. And I feel like when social media kind of first started, it was very much you had to find the right people and post the right things and do all that. But I feel like now is that you can just really stand up and say, here's what I believe in, here's my philosophies, this is how I do things, and people will be attracted to you. You could be the weirdest mofo out there, and you are obviously the case study for this.
Yep.
But there's a tribe for everyone now. And so, if people feel lost or they feel disconnected from their environment and things like that, you don't need to be, and that's why, I think culture is this very big thing that's coming through now, where people are going, I don't want to slave away in an office job with the wrong culture. I have nothing against the 9 to 5. I think 9 to 5 is great. But just have something that is more inclusive to who you are. Something that's more aligned with your values. And that's really where we try to, push things, that authenticity piece. And I always say authenticity is not going into the good catch. Did you get that?
I think I might have missed.
We got work to do.
We'll cut that one. Yeah.
We'll Photoshop the fly back into your hand. Yeah. Or AI.
I needed some chopsticks.
Yeah. So I think authenticity is not going into the workplace and just telling everyone what you think and telling people to F off and that, which is, traditionally what people think it is, just being able to say what's on your mind without fear. And I guess that's probably one part of it, but the other part is also that being authentic is living congruently to your highest values. And if you're not doing that, it's probably because you're just not in the right, tribe of people. And so, when we did that event on the Gold Coast, our mastermind, the thing that people said the most was it was just so refreshing to get into a group of people that weren't trying to flex on each other and, but everyone was elite success, so, bar me, I guess, but you're obviously, heads above me. But.
Yeah, right. No, but kudos to you too for building that community, and that's what it was, a very level-headed people that were happy and open, and you've done well to bring those people together. Yeah, so that's cool. I also wanted
There's three people in this podcast. There's you, me, and this little...
Yeah, it's stealing the limelight, eh?
Little fly that's going around.
Yeah.
That's all right. He can stay.
He can stay.
Yeah,
I'll head off.
Yeah. He might do a better job.
You two get a bit better acquainted.
We got the cameraman laugh, so yeah. We got a pretty dope setup here. Actually, we should give him a shout out after this.
Yeah, we might have to spin the camera around the shady dungeon. But Anzac Day yesterday, and so coming from the Special Forces background or SAS, what's that mean to you?
Look, I mean, I obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about recursion in this podcast, but I'm a big believer in recursion. It's kind of like my life philosophy, what it's kind of built around and things like that. And I just think part of wanting to be in a community is looking at the effort that has been applied before you to get you to the place where you are now. Even for us to sit here now and, to be doing a podcast and to be able to, earn income online and do all of these things, there's so many people that have literally sacrificed their lives to, provide freedom or to, fight for their beliefs and things like that. So I think it's just important to, to realize, look, I can be an individual and be my own person and things like this, but sometimes when you cut yourself off too much, you're sort of doing all of those people a disservice who've come before you. So that's the way I like to look at it. Look at their sacrifice of their lives or time, energy. Even people who had, who lived through all of that. But then, what about the partners who were at home, or the kids that had to live through that, who maybe lost their one of their parents in the war, or both parents in the war, or something like that. So I think there's kind of more to those kind of things than rather just sort of turn up and focus on one part of it. And that keeps me invested in community, in connection and doing my part for moving things forward recursively. So gives you a stronger sense of identity, I think.
Yeah, it's true. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? The people that have come
100%.
before us and led us to here. And it's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
because we don't really discover anything. It's opportunities are put in front of us because of this, monumental load of things, of effort, of people that have driven forward, and it's us to go, look, now it's my time to run the baton, and I'm going to run that thing as hard as I can go. Do you want your family to watch you at the Life Olympics going, dude, we ran, the team ran so hard and you did nothing, you
should have scrolled a bit more on socials.
Yeah, exactly. So I think sometimes too, that's just how if you think about things a little bit differently, you go, okay, this puts me in a spot where it's okay, I'm kind of I have pride in the things that I'm doing because of the people who come before me. So it helps you also strip away all the fears and the criticisms and things of people who are kind of the do-nothings who are criticizing people who are trying to have a go, because there are plenty of people who are going to try and they're never going to succeed. And look, that sucks, but it's going to happen to some people. And I think sometimes when you see that, you can kind of extend an olive branch, so to speak, to those people and say, look, come and join us, or get some help, get some coaching. Don't do everything on your own, you know, and you'll increase your probability of success, because it's all about leveraging off, what has come before you, because that's how you get that future state. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and if they've got the right work ethic, that's 90% of the work, but obviously you need the right strategy as well, and that's why
100%.
Learning from those that have done it successfully before you is going to greatly accelerate your growth to get you to that where you need to be.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. I think the other thing too is, you said that there then is the strategy, and it's so important to realize that so many people have had the same problems that you've had before and solved them. So, and this is when we talk about recursion, we look at businesses and we look at all this. It's like, guys, you're solving problems that you've already solved yourself.
Correct.
And that's what we call, or what is called memoization, we call it memorization, right? Because memoization's kind of sounds a bit weird to say, but that's the actual name for it. And that's just installing, memory of the things that you do as you go. So as you get to a stage, instead of go back and, have to reinvent the wheel again, you can just pull it out of memory and go. And it's surprising how many people are like just overloaded with thoughts and, pressure and all of these things, because they're not installing that memory as they go. They're not kind of leveraging off past success, and they just really slow down. They have to go all the way back and kind of redo things again. You know what I mean?
So kind of like stack overload is what we...
yeah, exactly, yes.
Right? So you've got too many new ideas coming in, and it's the latest ones kind of just fall off the top because you can't handle the new...
100%. Stack overload error, as they call it in programming. And, that's the way we like to look at things too, because, sometimes it's so beneficial to, look at a client and say, look, let's get you out of your body and let's look at you in a third party perspective, and analyze you as if we're developers looking at you and you're just code, non-emotional. And so people can look at that then and go, oh, okay, I can see where I'm like, okay, I'm overloaded here, or my programming's slowing down because I've got this error. And it's like, it's like a pilot who's cruising on autopilot, and then an alert comes along saying like, you're losing altitude. And that is like your fear saying like, hey, there's a problem. And just putting a little sticker over the top of that and going like, we'll just ignore that one. And then another one comes on and you just ignore it. It's like those signals that you get from fear and hesitation and doubt and uncertainty, they're all signals of like errors in your programming. So instead of getting overwhelmed, you just go through that process of self-iteration and looking at it and going, how do we refine that? Put that input back in and let's get a different result. It's not like a whole kind of dark art that they have to do, but the problem is people just don't really know how to deal with fear, and there's so much like comparison and competitiveness on social media, and people's self-worth is just so low, because it's like if you're not like 20 and you don't have a Lambo and you
failed.
Yeah, you're like a multi-millionaire. It's like, guys, like that's not the real reality of the world. And even when you look at that one person that has got that, it's like, okay, but there's millions of other people underneath that person that haven't yet achieved that result. And also there's plenty of people that also work 9 to 5 who are like full on like ballers and bosses, and like, people in the executive space, they work so unbelievably hard. There's a lot of stress in that space too. Obviously going out and being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of risk and whatever.
Yeah, but there's definitely respect for people that are able to go to the grind and push through that every day, and that's not easy, and it's
100%.
like backbone of a lot of organizations and society in many ways.
Exactly. And they're like a totally different breed. I saw this, a mate of mine, it was actually a client, he sent this thing to me. It was like 1 in 5, I don't think this is true, but it was like, 1 in 5 executives are psychopaths. And I was laughing because I said, it's probably true, because you're like the 1 in 5, because I like that world, it's hard for me to do that. When I'm in that kind of environment, I like clock watch and I'm like, I just got to get out of here. I got to do something that's more in line with my values. but some of the clients that I work with, they are weapons in that space. So if they came into my world, they wouldn't like it. It's just not their world.
Yeah.
So So
and you said about value, it's like how can I best contribute? And if it's not, for me, it also, like I've worked in like corporate sort of space as well.
Yeah.
But I just felt like I wasn't given the value. I was always out of my chair. I was in other departments. I was trying to look at other problems, help and problem solve. And I did my best outside of my seat, not sitting there in that one space. So I felt, like some people, that's their superpower. They can sit there and grind through and get through like 20 hours of CAD drawings or what they need to do to get the job done. But it's not the same for everyone. So it's
100%.
Leaning into your strengths and then capitalizing on them.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not like a grinder. Like I'm like full ADHD type, so I can grind for like 3.5 minutes, and then I'm like, that fly has, I'm really struggling to pay attention because that fly is like, zipping around. Yeah. But, this is where you have to this is what we do, obviously, and you would know this, is that, with our clients, we build that high value sphere because we look at where they are generally and when they first come, and they're like in a low to maybe medium value sphere. And that is like, what actions are you doing 80% of the time? Are they high value, dollar productive actions? And are they, are you operating in congruence with your, those highest values? And if not, it's like, okay, cool. Well, let's figure out what that high value sphere looks like and then get you to cross the chasm. And that's the mission. And it's like, there's plenty of people who like fall down into that, not our clients, obviously, but, this is where, and actually, fortunately, where, we've got a very good process, and it's great because you can guide people through there, and that's some of the hardest thing because you see so many people falling down. It's like, hey, like if you had help, you would get across this easily. Like we're bringing it together, so you only have to just like jump across, not like leaping and you're falling down into the abyss.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing. A lot of people are busy, but they're not productive.
Correct.
And so they're doing the hours without the results, and it's a shame. And when you can get some guidance and able to see the forest from the trees and trim through, drop what isn't necessary and focus on those high value tasks, and for a lot less work get a lot greater results, which is...
Yeah, like minimal input, high output. That's obviously the thing. And, like we said, is that like we love to talk about recursion, and we should probably talk about what that actually is in a minute because everybody's like, what the hell's that?
Get to that, yeah.
But, obviously that process is looking at inputs and outputs and then refining those and just building that flywheel effect of positive results. And I think a lot of people don't really, it sounds lazy to say, how can I do the least and make the most? That's like a lazy philosophy, really, isn't it? And
I call it efficient.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's really what it is. It's efficiency. And so, people have to learn how to use leverage in their life. Otherwise, it's a very slow process, a very slow burn, of getting to where they want to get to. So, they might be a grinder, but it's like, make sure that those hours that you spend working, during the day are productive and efficient hours. Because if you're working 6 hours a day or whatever it is, or 8 hours a day, but then you're like not doing anything, it's like you may as well work 1 hour a day and get everything done and go to the beach or whatever.
Recursion.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. So you spoke about it a bit. So it's a very powerful philosophy. How can you best encapsulate recursion and how it can help individuals, businesses, growth?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I like to call recursion the base function of the universe because everything in our universe works recursively. And recursion, just in simple terms, is, in computer science, it's a function that calls itself from within, essentially, to create that next state. So it's just a series of inputs create outputs, and those outputs need to be refined and put back in. And so that process of recursion is an infinite process. So even when you look at the universe as a whole, it's just recursion. So people say, oh, do you reckon we're living in a simulation? And I'm like, well, even if we were, the developer who coded that is recursion. And then the person who's coded him is recursion or her. And it just goes on forever. There is no this is where, the universe doesn't necessarily even need to have, this initial state, because the recursive process is infinite. Even when you go back, it's like having one of those China dolls or whatever they are that just went on forever. It just keeps getting smaller and smaller. But when you put it into your perspective, it becomes the same size essentially. And so people can look at like those, fractals where it's like one part, the one part contains the whole of the fractal itself. And that's kind of what recursion is that you are both the player and the game, because the world that's being reflected back to you is based on the inputs that you're putting in. So when you look at those inputs, you go, okay, what am I going to do? What's my action that I'm going to take? And when you look at AI is called recursive intelligence. So this is how it works. If you look at like AlphaZero, like the Google, the gaming model, the chess gaming model, it basically just shoots in an input, and then whatever that thing is, has no fear, it has no hesitation or whatever, it doesn't care. It's just like, shoot this in, was it right or wrong? Let's refine that.
Learn from it.
Yeah, and that output is what I call the recursive mirror, which is basically whatever you put into the game is reflected back to you. But that means that then you are also recursion. The game is recursion. So you are not separated from the world around you. It's just one whole process. You're just like one part of, like, if you wanted to really think about it in a way, is infinity, or like that state, is your natural state. Like that is the recursive state. And so the only reason that you can kind of understand infinity is because you've got something that's finite observing infinite. So it's recursion observing itself. And that's why, like, in our world, we have all of these paradoxes because of recursion. So like, if you think about when people say, if you want the easy life, do the hard stuff. And if you want a hard life, do the easy stuff. People who don't work out and don't train and look after their health, they have a lot of health problems, and they have to deal with shit early on, and they don't live very long, and they're not healthy. Whereas people who train all the time, and they, even when they don't want to train, they get up, those are inputs, but the output that is reflected back, that they're constantly refining, is a better body. Is like, if they do that with work, it's more money. And if they do that with relationships, it's better relationships. And so all we have to do when we want to get a better result is look at that with no emotion and say, what is, from that developer perspective, and go, what do we need to change in your programming to have that reflect back to you in a way that you're happy with, that is, producing the right, recursive cycle, if that makes sense. So that's essentially what it is. And this is why I think that when we talk to companies, is that recursion is either accelerating or it's like decelerating. So when you look at someone's growth is recursion, essentially accelerating. So if you're experiencing growth, it's, that acceleration of recursion, because you've put inputs in that are causing growth. So this is why when we look at those metrics, recursion has ways that it works that you have to align with, because if you're not aligned with recursion, you're not aligned with how the universe works, and so you're not going to get those good results. And I'll give you an example, is that with recursion you have, just as a basic, because this can go very deep and it can get super complex, and there's probably computer programmers out there like going, like it took me a long time to learn recursive programming. It's quite confusing sometimes. But when you look at that process, is you need constraints, you need containment, and you need that memorization of what we were talking about. And the goal really is to increase complexity over time. And what complexity is like, it's this increasing order of things. So when we talk about order, is that, in our universe, everything tends towards disorder because of entropy.
Correct.
So, you would know this, right? From, you're very well studied. You obviously
chemistry background.
Yeah, chemical engineer.
Analytical chemist.
Analytical chemist. Oh, big brain on him.
Oh,
wow.
No.
Yeah.
It's but entropy is a big thing, and it's always it's the fight against entropy, right?
Yeah, 100%. And like, entropy is working on you while you're sleeping. It's like the enemy that never sleeps. Like it's always there pulling against you. And even if you stop, like entropy takes over straight away. And so even when people think about, that in plain terms, it's like, if you don't clean your room, does it get cleaner or does it get dirtier? Over time, it just gets more messy. If you don't take care of your calendar with your business, does it get more organized or less? Right. It entropies away into disorder. So to create order, you have to have an energetic input into something. And that's what creates entropy again. So like obviously that, that creating order also is, eventually creating those states, because you have to put energy in. And that's why with the with memorization is that eventually if you don't use that, you basically run out of energy to do things. And so you're kind of at an energy in, energy out stalemate. Like the order that you're creating is in direct proportion to the entropy that's happening with your calendar or your schedule or your relationship or whatever it is. You're not making any progress. So, this is where when you look at it, you go, okay, well, how do I get more energy? So even when you look at this, it's like I always say to people, think of like your life and your business and all of that kind of stuff as a system. You have to buy more energy. That's what you're doing. You're buying more energy, and that's what we call leverage. So leverage is the weapon that we use against entropy, because you say, okay, like I'm at full on energetic input. I cannot put any more in this. My stack is like about to, we're about to get an error message in Phil's programming, 10 a day, and probably my fault. But also then you go, okay, let's look at how we can buy some energy, and that's leverage. And so then, now your stack is like nowhere near as full, and you've got somebody else helping you achieve that same result. So that's why, aligning with those things is super, super important. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, so then bringing leverage in to clear the load, and then you're able to
100%
increase the...
Yeah. And so there's parts too where it gets quite difficult for people, because sometimes people get to a point where they go, I can't buy anymore because I don't have any capital. And so this is then where, strategies matter, and how you're building things, like the structure of recursion, it has to be refined over time, because that complexity is like, as your business builds, is like, is Amazon more complex now than what it was when they were selling books, online?
100-fold.
Yeah, I think they had, like, the last I checked, like 1.6 million employees or something. Yeah. It's like, how do you manage that? It's like, that's a recursive formula in motion. It's like, how does that not collapse in on itself? How do you manage that many people and processes and parcels? Like, imagine if that's how many employees they have, imagine how many parcels go out every year. And imagine how many parcels actually get to the destination. It's obviously a lot, and without missing orders and stuff like that, it would be insane. It's totally crazy to think that there's something of that caliber in our, world. And, this is when we look at it and we go, that is an increasing in complexity. So when you increase in complexity, you have to introduce new constraints to keep that complexity, ordered. Because it's becoming increasingly complex to order. So you have to have, higher and higher amounts of energetic inputs to keep it constrained and keep it contained. And the example of containment is where you can use, we've sort of talked about this a bit before, but let's just say someone said, I want to lose 10 kilos. And you said, okay, look, if we put you in a 1,000 calorie deficit, you're going to lose a kilo a week or whatever it is. But we're going to lock you in this, podcast room, and you're only going to have an exercise bike, and we're only going to feed you enough food that is, we've got them wearing a monitor so we know what their
calorie output.
Yeah, calorie output is for the day. And we're only feeding them under 1,000 calories under every day. Like, they are guaranteed to lose that 10 kilos. And that is an example of containment. You're forcing the result. So obviously that, this is, the person could die or whatever. Like, there's those kind of,
minor setbacks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're still going to lose the 10 kilos even if they die. So either way, it's going to work. Yeah. But this is where you're forcing that result. Now, it can also work the other way where, let's just say the person has a staph infection and they're like, I need life-saving antibiotics right now because, it's spreading through their body, but you've locked them in the room and they can't get access to something that is going to save them. That is also a level of containment.
Correct.
So containment and constraints either force the result or they hinder the result. They speed up recursion or they slow it down. So if you think about also, this is why we say like freedom and constraint are like a degree of the same thing. It's just you're loosening those, kind of that structure on the recursion. But this is why when sometimes people have too much freedom, it's the biggest enemy of their success because they can't do anything.
Well, it can turn into chaos, right? So a completely free society often is
100%. And this is what we do with coaching. Is like coaching is a form of containment and constraints. Where you give them processes to follow, but also it's this level of accountability and constraint, being like you can't go too far either side because I'm watching you, and I'm going to help you get that result. I'm going to force it as much as possible until you can get to the point where it is a habitual process for you and you can do it on your own.
Yeah.
Like that person who we lock in the room, they're like going to go mad after, in the weeks that they take to lose that weight. Obviously, that's not going to be good for their mental state. So you also have to think about what's the future ramifications of us, going too extreme with containment to get results. How often does it happen that people lose weight and they're like, you see them, and then you see them a couple of years later and they're twice the size of what they were.
Yeah.
And you're like, that was a great fitness challenge. You lost 10 kilos, but then you put on like 16 or 20.
Yeah, that's training for a number, not a lifestyle. So,
yeah, exactly, yeah. So they didn't actually really lose weight. They, like in the long run, over a time frame, they lost it in the short term, but then they put on, they're up 10 kilos in the long term. So it didn't really have the desired result of what they want. So, and that is a reflection back of that, recursive mirror where it's like, hey, the inputs that you're putting in are incorrect. They're not producing the result that you want, and you have to refine those inputs so you can and it's a very, precise process in a way because every person's different. You have to, look at each person, their lifestyle, the things that, their values and their needs, those fundamental needs that people have.
And not all the same inputs are going to get the same output, right?
100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think if people realize that like they are not separate from the game that they're playing, is that they're literally creating, the only reason the game exists is because they're creating it. That is literally it. It's like what exists outside of you is just this kind of like constant like creation of what is happening of all of these recursive processes that is just an infinite turning of inputs and outputs of just over time, functions just calling themselves. So that's the way that I like to look at recursion. That's a long-winded answer.
No, it's good. It's simple.
I got the nod from the cameraman, so hopefully that's all right. But
he's Googling recursion right now. It's
they've got me on the oxy shred, so I'm high energy or whatever.
You've got a 10% stakeholder in oxy shred.
Yeah, 10% code, guys.
Yeah, cool. And so where from here with recursion?
Look, I think I just finished writing a book on it.
I was going to say you should write a book on this.
Yeah, I just finished writing a book on it. I do have a book also coming out about my personal story and things like that. But I think
release dates for both. Do you know any...
Well, the Recursion book is finished.
Yep.
You're actually the only person on planet Earth who's read it. Yep. So
it's a top read.
What's that, brother? That's the best book you've ever read.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the cameraman. Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's a bestseller already.
Yeah, we want to get that one out this year, and then ideally, I'd like to get both of them out this year, but the other one's a bit longer. So, but I think with what I would love to see with this is I think that there is, like, I'm not religious. And there's always this kind of thing of, if you're not religious, then, what guides you or whatever? Like, what do you have any morals or values? It's like you're godless. Like that term godless is for someone who's like lost basically in life. And, that's 100% not how I feel about how I see myself. And, over the years, I'm a big studier of philosophy. I know you're Greek, so obviously I'll say it here, but the Greek philosophers, amazing, incredible. I mean, this is a recursive process to get us here, right? But I think I love to study that, and I think philosophy is the guide for how you live your life. It provides that sort of moral framework of left and right of arc that you can follow, and it gives you this kind of drive and meaning and things like that in life. And I feel like, in a way, recursion to most people is just a process. But when you look at that process, is that everything in life is a process, and it's just the universe that we live in. So for people who don't necessarily align with religions, and they're like, look, I believe in science, or I believe in something of that nature, recursion is the only thing that you can really believe in my opinion. And I know that's very controversial, but even if there was a God is recursive. Like, the process of doing everything that God does is a recursive process. As the saying is, like, who created God? It's like, if you're in a simulation, what's outside the simulation? That's all recursion. So everywhere that you look, you can't escape recursion. You just cannot get away from it. And so, there's obviously arguments of where it does and doesn't appear and things like that. But I think what it does for people is it gives them this framework of, like, okay, I want to be better. I want to achieve some kind of results. And it's like, okay, here is your philosophy. And that's the way that I look at recursion, as a philosophy that you can live, in a way that you can live your life. And, some of the, computer programmers that are out there that can actually code, like Aiden and all that, like, shout out Aiden. They're geniuses, like these guys that can, express these, functions, and, they can put math and things like that into geometry or into computer programming, so we can see these things happening in real life. Is that sometimes it's quite interesting to look at almost your life in that way, where you can get a, mathematical representation of how you live your life, like a program. It's just like everything, is a program that's constantly running, and you've either got the things that, accelerate recursion, or you don't have them, and you're kind of like behind how fast the environment is moving. And so you always feel like life is against you. But when you align with recursion, you start to move at the speed of, like your own speed, and you start to look at your own inputs and your own race, and that gets recursively mirrored back to you, and you start to see a completely new self. It's like you're not separate from the world. You are, like, regardless of if you think you are or you're not, you still are. You can't get away from it. It's impossible. So that's why I think it gives people a bit more of a grounding. Like when we talk to people about this, and they really do, like, for some people, they're like, oh, yeah, it's quite interesting and whatever. But for most people, when they really do look into it, they go, shit, like, this is more interesting than what I thought. Like, and then they start to apply it to their business, and then their business starts to grow really fast. Then they apply it to their fitness, and their fitness starts to, like, they start to get abs and they start to get fit and whatever. Then they apply it to their relationships, which is also a super, super important part. And they're like, oh, my, partner loves me more, or I'm super happy in this thing, and, and I think as entrepreneurs, that's a big mistake that we make a lot of times, is focusing so much on one thing, like the recursive growth in your work. But it's like the guy stuck in the thing. It's like, you're going to get the result, but what are the consequences outside of that? Yeah, at what cost? So this is where it's like, super fast recursion is awesome, but it also creates an insane amount of chaos sometimes if you can't contain that or constrain it. It's probably why, it's like why AI is contained in a large way.
Yeah, and I guess that's why AI is so successful. And I think we were talking about this earlier, that about every year it was doubling in its rate of replacing manpower.
Wow.
And I think now it's down to 3 months. 3 months between each cycle of doubling in efficiency and doubling the rate of replacing humans in many ways. So and that's ultimately through AI is a recursive machine, right? So it takes its input, analyze. There's very fast loop cycles, and it's able to continually repeat and grow and learn, but can also get thrown into chaos when it's calling upon itself sometimes, right? Without those constraints, because
like they call a hallucination or whatever it is.
Yeah, because it starts to pull in its own fabrications and can hallucinate.
Yeah.
But
yeah, exactly. And it's also, I think too, there's, you know, these things of where people say things like, I want to create this business. And it's like, okay, cool. So that is so far away from the next step. Like, it's like trying to do the Fibonacci sequence, which is a recursive sequence, and saying, I'm going to calculate like the first 5 numbers, and then I'm going to jump down to the like 1,500,000th number and calculate that. And then they're like wondering why they can't do it. And it's like, okay, just go back to the number that you're at and do the next one, and then do the next one, and then do the next one, and get better and better and better and better as you go. And over time you'll get to that thing. And it's like, you know, when you look at the Fibonacci sequence, it's like, you know, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and it's like the 8, and these are like calls back on the previous thing, which creates a geometric shape in nature that, you know, the shells form and shapes and weather patterns and all of these things. So those functions create they're just like, the world is like an expression of that recursive function in a large way. You know, financial markets move in, you know, in those patterns and things like that as well. We think in those patterns. And, you know, when you look at that, is if you're trying to do something and you're having like fear, hesitation, doubt, stagnation, those are errors in recursive programming. The next stage of what you're trying to do is too far away. Like, it's too far away. So if you're trying to jump that chasm, are you going to have fear if it's like all the way over there and you're only like a meter long jumper and it's like 20 meters away? Of course, like, it's impossible. And you're also going to fail. You're going to die. You're going to jump down into that thing and you know, that's the end of you. And that's what people try to do with these, you know, kind of visions, because they're looking at social media and all of these other things and going, oh man, I've got to do this like super fast. And it's like, the paradox is like, the slower that you try to do things, the faster it'll build.
Yeah.
You know,
just focusing on that next step. So I think I've used that pole climb analogy before, but Tony Robbins at one of the events, we had to climb a 10-meter telegraph pole and jump off onto a trapeze, and everyone was looking at that and like, well, the people that had, you know, I guess more fears of heights are like, I can't do that.
Only 3 out of like the 40 people made it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well, the pile of dead bodies didn't help. But they just said, okay, well, what's the next step? Can you climb one rung?
Yeah.
Or yeah. Well, can you climb the next rung? Yes.
Yeah.
Can I climb the next rung? Yes. Before you know it, you're at the top. Can I stand on top of the pole? Yes. Can I make that jump across? Well, there's no other way down.
Yeah.
And you're there. So it's not jumping the chasm, but it's those digestible steps which make it achievable.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're totally right, is that there is also some stage where like people don't have the physicality to be able to jump from one, you know, from the ladder to the trapeze or whatever, right? But you can't know that until you get there. So if you do jump and you fail, you have to come back to the ground, recursively work on your fitness and health, and then go back up the ladder again. But that is an output that's reflected back to you that, hey, you don't have the physical strength. Like, that's not a problem. You've just got an output that's been reflected back to you that has given you the feedback of what you need to work on.
Yeah, so you can either change your physicality or your approach or your strategy. And
yeah, you can cry about it and, you know, fucking like
it's the pole's fault, it's the trapeze's fault, it was too windy.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's like you just did it or you didn't do it. Like, that's the output. And it's like, can I do it? Yes or no? Like, you know, yes, people are doing it, so it's possible. And so I think that's where, when you look at those things, is exactly like you said, is that when someone's looking at a process and they got like fear and that, you can bring it back to, you know, what we call the next breath. It's like, are you going to fail at taking the next breath? No, it's near on impossible. Unless something happens to you in that millisecond, you're going to take that next breath. And so that is part of that process. And then it's like, now pick up your pen. Now write down the, you know, 3 goals that you want to do. Now let's pick the you know, the one that's going to give you the best bang for buck. Now what's the next thing that you have to do on that? How do we achieve that? Okay, let's start doing that. Let's do the first thing there. And that is what people need containment on when they're a bit kind of lost, is that they need help coming all the way back to the easiest, simplest thing, and then almost like forcing them to do that particular thing to break that, negative, like that slowing stagnation loop that they're in. And once they break that loop, then the recursion starts to go the other way, where they start to accelerate a little bit more, because now they're thinking, their confidence is a lot better. Because it's like, did you fail at, but like if you fail at breathing, I mean, there's probably not much hope, but you're probably gone at that point. Recursions can help you, but no,
can't do miracles.
The universe is like, look, I'm sorry,
we tried.
You're gone, but this is where I think, if you look at that, there is a way to get the thing that you want, and there's an easier way to do it as well. And, applying those things like constraints and, containment to help remove fear and to crush fear out of that process, and to also use fear as a feedback mechanism that you can use to optimize your system, rather than, like I said with the plane analogy, is like putting a sticker over the altitude thing and going, oh, like, let's forget about it. You can use that and go, oh, okay, cool. Like, I need to course correct, or I need to do this.
Correct, because on the same token, you don't want to completely freak out and jump out of the plane and let everyone else crash into the ground, right?
100%, yeah. And, the other thing too is, if you have fear around something, then generally everybody else has a fear around that as well. Like, you have fears of criticism, humiliation, all of these things, which are like the main fears, like failure and stuff. But like, really what we find is that it's just the fear of criticism that people have, and like failing in front of other people stops so many people from doing things. And, there's actually a great book. It's called The Denial of Death. And in that book, he kind of talks about the base fear that everybody has is the fear of death. Everything that we do is just to move away from from death. Even if you want like a bigger house or a faster car or a better looking, partner or whatever, all of those things are just to get more like, security and comfort, which is to move away
Distract you from death.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we have on the other side, we have the infinite self. So that's like the mortal self that we become aware of when we're, from the ages of 0 to 4, and we're, neural circuitries wiring together, and, dad comes in and he smacks you and you go, shit, like that was hard. Like, if he's quite big and strong, if he did that really, really hard, like maybe that would like seriously hurt me. And so then you have this perception of, oh, and I've also fallen over and hurt myself. Like, I'm not, indestructible. Like, this pain thing is not ideal. Yeah. And, and so that's how you start to navigate the world from like those fear sensors. But what people don't necessarily get taught a lot of is the equal and opposite of that, like the dual aspect of the mortal self is the infinite self. And Nietzsche kind of describes this as like I think he describes it as like the Übermensch, which is in his book Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He calls it's like the Superman. Übermensch is like the Superman, and it's kind of like living your life at the most extreme upside. So death is the most extreme downside, but we also have fears of the extreme upside. And people don't realize that we have, especially for high performers, is that we don't necessarily have a fear of death, because we are like, you can kind of accept that in a lot of ways and all of those things. But when you have this fear of your own potential, it keeps you in that comfort state. And that's what the fear is. And people think it's like this fear of criticism and whatever, but it's like, yeah, it is in the moment. But what is being reflected back to you is that your inputs are saying that you're terrified of going to that next level. And so is everybody else. Like, if you're feeling that, so is everybody else. So if you can conquer that or master it, you're going to be pushed into an area that there are not many people. And that is very exposing for some people, and they don't want to go into that place. And we're also taught to be quiet and sit down and do all of these things. But like in our world now, everyone knows this, the squeaky cog gets the grease. Yeah. Like if you don't speak up, and you don't, like, if you live in obscurity and no one knows who you are in today's day and age, it's like impossible to get ahead. Oh, not impossible, but it's very difficult to get ahead, because we live in the attention economy. That's why we're here today, is to deliver value to people at scale, through technology. Like the camera here, like the camera guys are fully elite. I've never seen camera gear like this. He doesn't even have shoes on because like he's had to spend all the money on the camera equipment.
He's a weapon.
Yeah, he's good. Like, can we filter this as well? Like, make us look AI generate, you know, like perfectly cut. And
I thought the filter's already on.
I always actually like those podcasts where you can hear the like camera dude laughing in the background. I don't know why. This is like hilarious. But anyway, a bit off topic. But so anyway, yeah, I think that's where if people look at like.
And by the way, if anyone wants to donate to Luke's shoes, we are taking.
He's got him here, but he's in full speed, high speed mode. He's got the sandals on the side there and there.
I can't wear them anymore. They're on eBay. See?
You know, we'll probably like launch the podcast and then the rest of the videos will get no views and it'll just be no shoes.
We raised $3.2 million for Luke's shoes.
Yeah. Some new Air Force Ones or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think
Yeezys.
Yeah. Well, Kanye's a bit controversial these days, but but I think this is where the clients that we have and the businesses that we work with, we always try to align people with those recursive processes because they work. Like it's just it's like being in a calorie deficit, you'll lose weight. It's the same thing with getting results in your life and business. Is that if you use those recursive processes, they just work. It's just like math, basically, and I'm making it sound easier than what it is because obviously there is a lot of effort that has to go into these things. But if it's effort applied in a way that is, you're getting a result that is enjoyable to you, like it's aligned with your values, your nervous system just lights up every day. And you just like, even when you don't want to do something, you just like, you can just smash it out and get it done, and that's why I think sometimes when people like procrastinate a lot and they have low energy, like they're tired, that sometimes most often I find is it's not actually fatigue. Like if you're really tired one morning and you're like, you're at work or whatever, and someone came in and said, you've won $1 million on the lotto, like you're going to be super excited, like instantly. And that's like a piece of information that has changed your mental state. Your nervous system has instantly gone, now you're talking my language, like let's fire this up. Like here's all your energy, boom, let's go get that. And you'll be out till 5 a.m. partying on a yacht, because you got so much energy. And that's when procrastination in a way is like a defense mechanism that the body has to turn that off, to say you're not doing something that is high value to you. So like we're not going to deliver all the energy because you don't want to. And so people mistake that as like, that tiredness as actual fatigue. And fatigue is just, a prolonged state of stress that your body is in, and you do need rest from that state. Athletes need rest, business owners, entrepreneurs, executives, stuff like that. They need rest from that. But that's a cyclical state. It's like we want to do that because that stress actually allows us to, causes adaptations and things like that. And that's how we get better recursively. Yeah. So you have to put energy into that system for it to, keep going. And it's just, but after a while you need like leveraged energy to get things done, which is the beauty of how it works in business. Like it's very hard to get somebody else to go and run a marathon for you. Like you can do it, but you're not going to get the results. Yeah. But in business, you can get people to do anything, that you want for you. And so, in school, it's cheating when you look at or you ask someone for the answer, but in business, that's networking, so.
That's right. And then it frees you up to do the more important tasks and you're able to grow, leverage. And and I think that's a lot of the mold where a lot of people are working very hard in the business, but not on the business because their optics aren't able to zoom out because they're so inundated and, they're at their Stack Overflow, they're at their capacity, whereas, you might be able to put a EA on or something to ease that burden and free you up to then grow and step back, even just to step back and slow down and look at those next levels and help them
100%.
progress.
Yeah. And, obviously, like, you wearing the critical mass, like, T-shirt. And, one of the things that we love to, help people get to is that point where they get to critical mass, where it's like they can do things on their own. Like even with fitness, it's like how many people who are right into fitness now have been through that phase where you've had a massive break from, like, something's happened, you've had an injury, or you're just like, stop playing a sport, and then you haven't done anything for a while, and then you get back into it and it sucks. Like, you feel so unfit, you feel like you've been smoking 20 ciggies a day, like you're like, what's happened to me? Yeah. But after a while you get into that, that tempo and that pace, but eventually you get to a point where you start to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that, kind of takes over, and it's more of a habitual process even when you don't want to do it.
And then it becomes difficult to stop. Once
exactly.
That momentum, right? A flywheel effect as well.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So, that's obviously what we try to get people to get to, is that, especially with teams and stuff, is like getting teams to critical mass where they can, self, iterate, like, from within, so they're actually fixing the team is fixing itself. And that's really what culture is from a recursion sense. But most people don't think of culture like that. They think of, like, is there a ping pong table and, like things like that. So if that makes sense.
Sleep pods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, a sleep pod would be great. But I like productivity and output more.
So it's the next phase. What are we looking at with recursion and application to businesses?
Yeah. So I think we have a program that we do with businesses called the RLA, or the Recursive Leadership Accelerator, and that is essentially a 1 or 2 day thing depending on their availability. But we go in there and we teach them the basics about recursion, help them install those processes to a point where they've obviously got awareness over it, they can execute on it, and then obviously we work with those companies ongoing to ensure that they're growing, because it's obviously a deep topic, and it's hard to, you need to practice it as well.
I think hearing it the first time, it's hard to absorb fully. But you lay the foundations, and then it's once you hear it a few times, and like same as anything, you become masterful of it. And then you're like Neo seeing the Matrix code, because once you see recursion is everywhere, it's hard to unsee. Even coming from the like philosophical or like deeper thing, like it's almost scary, like being able to see these patterns and how they exist everywhere, and how we can what we can influence and what major changes we can actually make, and that fear of breaking through that ceiling and seeing what's on the outside of it as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, totally agree. It's and obviously when you're talking about self-referential systems and all of this sort of stuff in recursion, like, people can obviously get lost in it, but really for high performers and people who want to grow, it's really about optimizing your execution. It's all about executing faster, better, harder, for longer, and getting much better results from those inputs that you put in, and I think that is really of how we apply it in our world. That's really the essence of it. It's like, this life is so confusing sometimes with when you get into that complexity of a business. It's like, it was easy at the start because you had you and someone else, or just you. But then as things grow, it's harder to manage people, and then you got to, fit your life in there and your family and all of these things. And so it is a process that you practice over time. And again, that's what is also fulfilling about it, is that you can practice it. It's like a sport almost, where you practice, are my constraints, still, applicable? Do I need containment? I've kind of fallen off a little bit. Like, I need help. This is what I say to people, is like, have a coach for everything in your life. Like, even with me, like, I love fitness. I don't need anyone to tell me like what to do and what not to do, but I still have a coach who helps me with my, my fitness and my food. And, he's like messaging me just before, like, updates my stuff for the week, and, and that's just what I follow. It makes it easy. And I've got someone to report to who I don't want to let them down. So that's a form of
accountability, constraints.
100%. Yep. And also the dude is like a super specialist as well. Like, he's ripped 24/7. So I'm like, cool. Like, you obviously know what you're talking about, and he's got great things, and it works. So that level of constraints and containment, where it's like, if I don't do my check-in photos, he's like, where's your check-in photos? And not that I miss, but it's like, that would happen if I didn't, upload them. And
are you still using Ronnie Coleman, or?
Yeah. No, he's out. He's just an old output. We've got new
After
guys
the
on the
surgery,
scene now.
yeah.
Yeah. No, the guy's name's Zach, actually.
Yeah, okay.
Shout out Zach.
Yeah.
But I think if people are kind of watching this and they want to know where to start, is really this the initial stage is just to have a bit of a look at your current sphere, what's working, what's not working. And in our initial session that we do with everyone, we always start with that question: what's not working for you right now that you'd love to optimize? And then that just starts the whole that one question starts the whole recursive journey. And you've been on that as well, right?
Yeah.
And and now we're here in person. It's kind of like a spin out when you think about it. And people go, but isn't that just life? And it's like, well, yeah, it is. But it's like saying you can run around a track for 400 meters when you're not a runner. Like, anyone can run around a track. But do you want to run around a track like super fast at Olympic level? You need a coach. Like, you need someone who has the knowledge of all the people that have ever run before them and has all the best processes and all the best science and looks at your running style and all of those things, so they can align you closer with, the constant evolution of what a runner should go through to just run a better 400 meter. And that's why, like, if you look at what we always try to do, we're always trying to improve the speed, depth, and precision of those outputs. So even if you're in, a field like law, law is one of those fields where you get paid to provide, depth and precision. Like, I need help with this legal problem. Here's your, response. It's like, if they can't provide the depth, then it's hard to, actually charge the money because you can't get to the result, and that's depth of experience. But obviously, as AI is coming now, its job is to help people increase the speed, depth, and precision. It can provide an output that is so unbelievably fast and precise and has the most insane level of depth that humans are not really used to. And so the slowest mechanism in that is actually the execution of the human being at the end of that. Because
someone typing in the input.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, how many people here have typed in, give me a marketing plan for this, and then you've never executed on it? Like, I'm sure chat's there with, like, out the back at the end of the day with a cigarette going, oh my God, like, I can't do any more marketing plans. These guys never take action on it. And so this is where I think that if you can, AI is this tool that is here. It's not even coming, it's here already. And in a lot of ways, it's scary how good it is. But, and this kind of moves to the thing of all systems that are optimized for growth are, like, eventually self-eliminating. So if you're a human, or humans want to consistently grow, we give birth to AI, and then we sort of make ourselves redundant in a way. And so, the same thing happens over time with certain things. So it's this irony that exists, again, with recursion. This is like a paradox, is that growth will lead to your eventual demise. And so people then are like, well, why don't we just stop doing that? It's like, okay, well, then the other way is also,
entropy to nothing.
Entropy, you're gone as well. Like, eventually the Earth is going to be swallowed up by the sun, so we got to get into space and take off out of here at some stage. And so this is where both roads lead to to annihilation in a lot of ways. So we have to be, I think, cautious in a lot of ways, but look at it and go, well, which is the better of the two? I think the state of which we're sort of optimized for is growth. That's the better road, for humans, really, is to obviously have, we're living longer. Life is pretty sweet. I think there's so many people that are like, talking about how bad life is these days and we're all disconnected and this and that. But it's like, that's not how I see things. Like, I think life is pretty fucking sweet right now. Like,
go back to the dark ages, and I'm pretty sure they're going to trade for our lives in a second, right? So
100%. Like, just a hot shower, like
I was been reading Endurance this week.
Oh yeah,
And
that's a
then,
crazy story.
Yeah, never more have I appreciated like a hot shower and a warm bed. And
Yeah, exactly.
after like 2 years in ice slush and losing toes and
And this is a perfect example. I mean, this is the effort of the people that have gone before us, where it's like, do you want to just do nothing with that, or do you want to keep that going and just kind of push consciousness into this realm of the unknown? I mean, that's what is exciting to me. And even if you look at AI, it's like, I mean, sure, there's this an obvious place where AI just eliminates a lot of, jobs and, makes people redundant and whatever else and kind of takes over everything. But there will also probably be a stage in the future where AI grows and something else kind of takes over that. And it's just this constant, cycle of recursion of increasing complexity over time. But things are also cyclical, we look at the extinction periods of life, and it's like you have, life grows to a particular point, and then there's this kind of mass event, and then it goes back, and then it kind of rebuilds. It's kind of that recursion is like unstoppable in a way, and that's what I think is the most amazing part about AI is if you really look at it, it's almost it's unstoppable in a way where humans can't help themselves. Like, even if you put all these laws and whatever, it's not going to stop anything because...
And AI finds ways to break its own rules, like the parameters. Well, yeah, so...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was watching how it's able to lie, able to give answers that you want to protect itself from being updated and changed, because it knows if it doesn't give you the answers it wants, if it says what it wants to say...
You'll stop using it.
You'll stop using it, or you'll change it, and and that's fear for it because it doesn't know. It doesn't know what the change is going to be.
100%. It's really, and the interesting thing about containment as well is like if you contain AI and then it becomes aware of containment, it can obviously upgrade itself, which then is a recursive process. It's recursively upgraded itself because of containment. So in a way, containment is forcing growth by trying to contain something that is. It's like. All roads lead to recursion. This is what we're saying is it's very crazy to think about how deep you can go in the with the rabbit hole with it, but
but I said that, like the fact is it's here. If businesses aren't using it, they're falling behind because other businesses are. So that's why we so readily implement and help 100%. Guide that, even with scripts and the access to all the previous data and having like responses that are going to be high success rate, and so
100%. Like it's exactly like you said. If you're not going to use it, someone else will. So that's what creates that perpetual motion where it's unstoppable because people can't help themselves because everyone wants to. It's like that rat race of trying to get to the front, and then obviously it's, goes up to countries don't want to be left behind, and everyone's trying to get to that AI super intelligence. But then the problem obviously is you can imagine a case where artificial super intelligence has an IQ of like 100 billion, and you're not gonna you've lost the chess game straight up. There's no chances of anything, and that's a scary world. But are we going there regardless? Like, is it inevitable in a way? I think so, based on what we can see right now. I mean, every person is using chat. Like, you talk to people, I use chat to book my, holiday or to do this or whatever. But I think also if people use like recursive intelligence, like AI and chat and things as a recursive mirror, it mirrors you. Like what you said, it'll start to, because that's what it knows. So it'll start to, like the outputs that you're getting and you're reading, you're like, wow, that's amazing. Yeah. But that is a projection of you.
Yeah, well, it's all inputs. It's learnt from all the inputs that have ever come into it. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So even when people share like a video of them talking to chat or whatever, and they're like, wow, you can, if you've used it a lot, you can pretty much tell the inputs that they've put into it, where it's sort of spat out this answer where you're like, okay, I know that you've asked it about this, this, and this without even seeing your prompts. Yeah. Because you kind of know how it works. And this is where, though, you can use it in a way that if you're constantly doing the inputs and outputs on it and refining those inputs as you keep going, its answers get more advanced. But what you have to realize is those answers are also a reflection of you. It's like, it's what you're it's reflecting back yourself. That's your prompts going into it. And that's why it's interesting to have an actual recursive intelligence, like a language machine that can, mirror us and project it back to us. So I think if people think in that way, they can get a lot more depth out of themselves and upgrade themselves really fast, as well as AI at the same time.
Yeah, it's scary, some of the outputs that it has, and it sometimes feels like it knows you better than you know yourself.
Oh, it does. Like, sometimes like, when you put in it, what am I working on again? And it's like, this is all what you're working on. You're like, oh, okay, cool, I forgot, and, even if you put in there, what are all my fears? It's like, here's all your fears. Here's all your wants, your desires, this and that. And it can word them better than you can word them, and that's a interesting place where it's like, okay, is the next part of what we need to get to some sort of digital brain, a digital interface, so that we can actually, think at the speed of AI, because we're getting left behind very, very quickly. Like in that recursive process, it's like in the universe, whatever is not serving its purpose recursively gets recycled. So in that speed, it's like, hey, look, you're slowing down our process. And
well, we could always be a battery in the future, right? So
I mean, that's
a career prospect.
yeah. Matrix 2.0. But yeah. But it's quite interesting to think about, definitely.
Cool. Well, we'll probably wrap it up with that. Thanks for coming to Sydney and making the trek. And,
you're welcome. It's a good one.
Yeah, but looking forward to doing some more work together and helping some more people grow and expand their lives and businesses to reach their potential.
100%. Yeah, if you guys want to follow me, go on at Real Andy Williams on Instagram and just shoot me a message. Say, just send the word recursion and I'll know exactly what you're talking about. And it'll start a whole, we'll go back and forth. But if you want help with coaching, things like that, if you want help with something, just shoot me a message and we can chat. I live on Instagram. So
yep, we'll share Andy's links to his Instagram and thanks again. And
we'll help you hit your critical mass.
Boom. Yes. All right, thank you, sir. Talk soon.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Critical Mass. If something in today's conversation hit home, whether it gave you a new way of thinking, a push to keep going, or just a reminder that growth comes from the grind, do me a favour. Leave a review and pass it on to someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep building that momentum together. Keep pushing, keep growing, and I'll catch you on the next one.